This is the Crazy Nature Show, where we learn about the natural world in a really weird and wonderful way. We've already been air surfing with a dragonfly. We've learnt about a multicoloured camouflage bug. And we've even been deep sea diving with an underwater bioluminescent disco ball. Wicked! But today, I'm really sorry to tell you that this episode is about something which at first glance is really, really boring, because it just sits there all day and doesn't really do much. And it just looks a bit like mouldy cheese. Ugh. Some might say it would even make the headlines of the snooze news. Boring! But that's not how I roll. This is the Crazy Nature Show, and we're going to get a little bit loopy and learn about lichen. Lichens are seriously cool, and they're something we probably walk past every single day. On trees, on gates and fences, even on wheelbarrows. They're a mix of two living things in one body. An algae, like what we see growing in a fish tank, and a fungus, just like what we see growing on some nice manky mouldy bread that's been in my cupboard for probably 2 weeks. It stinks. Oh. Now the fungi and the algae love each other and they stick to each other like glue. So let's chuck out flounder, sorry flounder, and chuck in some fungus. I'm not touching this, it's disgusting. No, it's not edible, Flossie. And there we are. That's sort of the basic premise of a lichen. And sometimes they might actually have two types of fungus. So let's chuck in this fungi-ridden apricot. And voila! And we say that the fungi and the algae have a symbiotic relationship with each other, which basically means that both of the organisms benefit much better by working together as one. Now it's actually the mouldy bread and the mouldy apricot that gives the lichen its shape, and it's the algae which uses the sunlight to make food for the lichen. They come in all sorts of different colours, shapes and textures, and there's one which is called reindeer lichen, and it looks like this. This one looks a bit like lettuce. This one is the colour of mustard. There's one that even looks like egg cups. And the one at the top of this tree looks like alien skin. But one thing in common with all lichen is that lichens don't have roots like a plant does. Lichens take in everything they need to grow and live through the air, which makes them a really good bioindicator. Now this is something which tells us about the quality of an environment, because the more lichen in an area, the healthier it is. Think of the trees you might see in a city, and there might not be too much lichen on them because there's lots of pollution, whereas in the countryside like here, pretty much most of the trees have a little bit of lichen because there are less cars around, less pollution, and a much more healthier area in terms of air quality. But what is absolutely mind-boggling about lichen is that they can live for thousands of years old. One lichen in the Arctic is 8,600 years old. Whoa! How ancient is that? Speaking of ancient, when ancient Egyptians mummified dead bodies, they took out the hearts, lungs and other organs and stuffed the body with a lot of things, but mostly with lichen, before wrapping it up in cloth. They even mummified some of their favourite animals. But you know what is so super amazing about lichens? Is that without them, life wouldn't be as we know it. In fact, some scientists think that life wouldn't even exist. Lichens are what we call a pioneer colonizer, which means that they're the first organisms to grow where nothing else can. Let me explain this a little bit more. About 700 million years ago, when the Earth was basically a load of bare rocks, not much really lived here. Because as you can imagine, bare rock with no food doesn't sound too tempting. I mean, Not for us at least, but for a lichen, this stuff is home. Yeah, they do love rock. A bit of roll maybe? I like their style. As primary colonisers, they conquered this extreme environment as they don't really need much to live. All they need is the sun and the air, because remember, they take in everything they need through the air. And in the air, in the atmosphere, they get the water that they need, the carbon dioxide, and the mineral salts they need to live. And that's it. That's all they require. And just to demonstrate how robust they really are, the mass extinction event which killed off the dinosaurs allowed the lichen to thrive. As the lichens are growing on these bare rocks, they release an acid which helps to break these larger rocks down into much smaller ones. And in time, this eventually creates a soil. The first things to grow from this lichen-induced soil were small grasses with simple root systems. But in time, as more nutrients were recycled and pushed back into the soil, and the soil was able to hold much more water, which means it had a greater water retention, much more complex and diverse plants can begin to grow. And of course, with all of this comes a wealth of wildlife. Some birds use lichens to camouflage their nests. Some insects even camouflage themselves as lichen to hide. And some animals just love to eat lichen, like some species of monkey. Can't imagine it's too appetizing for us though. Now this whole phenomena is known as primary succession. So to sum it up, lichen, a primary colonizer, comes in to an exposed bare rock and eventually creates a really rich and diverse environment. And that's it. But this primary succession isn't something we saw hundreds of millions of years ago. We actually can see this whole phenomena happening today. I know. Let's go on a quick holiday to Hawaii! Every year on the big island of Hawaii, and it's called the Big Island as it's really big and it's getting bigger every single year. This is because it's a volcanic island with a couple of volcanoes, and these create the new land. So let's give this a go. Safety goggles on first, because this is a very serious experiment. Right, so this volcano is going to be exploding with lots of lava, just like this. Oh my goodness. Whoa! The new land that's created every year, on average, is about the size of 35 million Post-it notes. That doesn't really help, does it? No. How about the size of 800 tennis courts, which is a pretty big area. And all of this is really barren landscape, until of course, the lichen comes in. And that's when primary succession occurs today and ultimately creates a really rich and thriving landscape, which is just wicked. Woo! Oh, and some animals just love the lichen. So there you go. I'm liking the lichen. A lot. Now next time you see lichen, don't stare at it for too long, as this is all it really does. But do keep an eye out for it, and remember it can come in loads of surprising places. And then just have a little think about how this superorganism breathes life into our landscapes.